In Parashas Mishpatim, the Torah discusses many different halachas, different laws. In fact, the beginning of the parasha, ve'ela ha-mishpatim. It begins with a vav. And it's known as the vav ha-machaber. Vav is usually a connecting vav. So, ve'ela ha-mishpatim, it's connecting us to last week's portion. Last week, the portion before Mishpatim is Parashas Yisro, and that dealt with the Aseres Hadibros, the 10 principles, the 10 commandments, the 10 statements. And the Torah is telling us that now that we're talking about Mishpatim, commandments, rational commandments, interpersonal commandments, ben Adam lechavero, you have to realize, just like on Har Sinai, the 10 commandments were given in awe, with the kolos, the shofar blowing, the brakim, the lightning, all the things happening. So too, when you do the mitzvahs Adam Chavero, you got to be just as serious about mitzvahs Adam Chavero. They're just as important as are the mitzvahs Adam Lamakom. And that's the Ve'ela HaMishpatim Asher Tasem Lifneim. That's why in the beginning of Parashas Devarim, it says Eila, these, because that's a new book. Eila Poso as Harishonim. These, we're starting something new, and we finished the book of Bamidbar, we're beginning a new book, Devarim. But here, the Eila HaMishpatim, it's one continuation. In fact, that's why Rav Sorotskin has a beautiful explanation. What is the first mitzvah given to the Jews after Mount Sinai? So the first mitzvah we find in the Parsha of Mishpatim is the commandment of Eved Ivri, how to treat a Jewish servant, how to treat a slave. And the Torah goes into all the details, how careful, how meticulous you have to be in treating a slave. If you only have one pillow, the slave gets it. If you're going to eat steak for dinner, you can't give him chicken. Whatever you're doing, you have to treat him like one of the family members, the appropriate action. So they point out, and that's why it's no wonder that after 6 years he wants to stay, because he has it so well there. But you have to, and in fact, as Rav Hirsch points out, that's a general rule. The Torah always talks about the most vulnerable, the most in need, and from there you learn out everyone else. If the Torah would say you have to treat a king properly, so how would I know an average person? But if you take the lowest person on the social ladder, a servant, if the Torah goes out of its way how you have to treat a servant, how much more so, how much you have to treat a regular person or someone higher than that. So it's interesting, why was this the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people? You would think, of all the mitzvahs, this is the last one they would need. Because the Jews were just slaves in Egypt not long ago. They just spent the last 210 years as slaves in Egypt. So you would think the last thing that have to be told is, make sure you treat your servant properly. Make sure you treat your slave in an appropriate manner. Why would this be the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people? I would think it should be the last one. That one they should know. And the answer is, sometimes it's just the opposite. God knows human psychology. And we see it all the time in these different countries where people rebel and revolt. And why? They want it better for the people. And then they take over and they treat the people even worse. One tyrant becomes a worse tyrant because it's human nature. You know what? It's payback time. I spent my time being a slave. Now let me reap the rewards of being a master. So that's what the Torah goes out of its way. The Torah understands the psychology. And it says, the first mitzvah, don't think for a second, it's payback time. And you could treat your slaves differently. That's the first mitzvah the Torah gives us, is make sure you treat your slaves properly. That's why it begins with Eved Ivri. So one of the many other mitzvahs, it deals with the mitzvah of the shore of an animal damaging property. So it says, the pasuk says in Lamed Hey, "V'chi yigach shor ish eshor eo v'meis, u'macharu es ashor achai v'chasu es chasbo, v'gam es hameis yechid." So if a man's ox shall strike his fellow ox, and he kills his fellow ox, they shall sell the living ox and divide its money, and the carcass too they shall divide. But if it becomes known that it was an ox, it goes through the different halachas of an animal goring other animals. So the Torah tells us, and the Gemara elaborates on it more, there's a difference that when an ox gores 3 times, so it gets the status of a shor muad. In other words, an animal, what it means is, the first couple of times, so maybe the animal didn't have to be so careful. I didn't know, like, my animal's crazy. But after the animal once, twice gores, the 3rd time already, it's a shor muad. And therefore, in terms of payment is much greater, because someone who you're not expected to watch does something, so then you're not as responsible. You are responsible, you pay a certain amount. But if he's a shor muad, he gores 3 times, and he has the status of a shor muad, so then he has to pay nezek shalom, he has to pay the full amount. So we see from here that how many times does it take to create a pattern? We see 3 times. If the ox gores 3 times, so the ox gets the status of a shor muad, and hence all the extra penalties and punishments come along. So is that true that 3 times creates a chazaka? Because we seem to find an apparent contradiction in different places, and in fact, it's a machlokas in the Gemara about how many times creates a chazaka. One opinion is 2 times. After something happened twice, that creates a chazaka. And the other opinion says, no, you need 3 times. So actually, what are the cases? It's Rav, and Shimon, and Gamliel. So one case, where do we find 2 times? So the Gemara's case is Meso Achiv Machmas Mila. A famous case where, unfortunately, you try to do a bris milah on your first son, you find that he's a hemophiliac, he dies. The second son also. So the 3rd son you can't do a bris on. At least you can't do it. There are a lot of details. You can't do one right away. Maybe when he gets older, this and that, gets more strength. But the bottom line is you can't do a bris on this 3rd child, because Meso Achiv Machmas Mila, we assume it's a sakana. It's a danger to do it, because he's a hemophiliac, and therefore, no bris. In fact, it's an interesting discussion what's the status of this child. Let's say he's a Kohen, he's a priest, he's a priestly family. So a Kohen gets to eat truma, that special food that the Kohen gets from the different gifts to the people. But for a Kohen to eat truma, he must be circumcised. He can't be an oral, an uncircumcised one. So it's an interesting discussion about what about the status of this child? What's normally we associate an oral, someone who intentionally does not get a bris. So that's a terrible thing. You're obligated, you're supposed to, you're healthy, and I say, I don't care, I don't believe in that stuff, no bris. But here, what about if halacha tells you can't do a bris? It's not that I want to get a bris, but what can I do? Halacha says it's usher because you're putting yourself in danger. In fact, I remember I had a case here years ago. This person, he wasn't Jewish, but he used to come here. He was an Italian man, and he wanted very much to become Jewish. But whatever, maybe he had some family connections, like in terms of maybe some that might have been like said Jewish roots, but the bottom line is this person wasn't Jewish, but he always related to the Jewish people. He treated himself like he was Jewish, so he wanted to convert. And okay, so convert then. The problem was, it was a danger for him. I forgot his exact, maybe he had many of them. I don't remember his exact sickness. But bottom line is, he wasn't allowed to have a bris milah. The doctor said it's a sakana, it's a danger if you do a bris, so he couldn't do it. But he was in so much distress that he couldn't. He said, I don't care. If I die, I die. I want to become Jewish. I don't care. So I'm not getting the details of the case. Doesn't make it. I'm just pointing out. In that case, if you're a convert or if you're a would-be convert, if you don't do a bris milah, so and let's say in a case where you can't do a bris milah, so again, there's a lot of details, but Rav Chaim Volozhin would write in, Rav Chaim, not Volozhin, not Shmulevitz, Rav Chaim, he was the postic in Europe, Rav Chaim Gruzinski, Rav Chaim Ozer, he paskin that no, you can't accept that person. If he can't do a bris milah, even though it's not his fault, he can't become Jewish. And then the issue would be, obviously, al pi svara logic, one could argue it depends on this question. Someone who doesn't have a bris because of halachic reasons, does he have the status of being an oro or not? So that's a discussion over there in case of truma between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. But either way, that's the case in the Gemara. The Gemara says that if you have someone who dies machmas milah, so you don't do. So we see 2 times creates a chazaka. If two brothers die from the circumcision, we don't do the third. So we see here, all you need is 2 times to create a pattern. What's another case the Gemara gives? Katlanis, it's called, from the word kato, to kill. Again, there are a lot of details to this, but basically, to oversimplify, it's a katlanis is a woman who marries, her husband dies, she marries again, her husband dies. So we say she can't marry a third person, because why? Again, there's a lot of details to it. We're not talking about, we're out in Florida, we have 85-year-olds are marrying 90, so obviously it's natural to die. But whatever the details are, but the point being is, the assumption is, she's creating, she has something to do with the death. I don't mean physically, like she's not killing them, taking out a gun and shooting them, but somehow, whatever it is, her mazel, she's somehow responsible for her husband dying. So therefore, the luck is kalana, she can't marry a third husband. So again, we see 2 times. So on one hand, by the case of Meso Achil Machmas Mila, the brothers die from circumcision. The case of this woman, 2 of her husband die, she can't marry a third. So we see 2 times creates a chazaka. Yet we saw from our pasuk here the shor muad, but it comes to an ox goring, it takes 3 times. So which one is it? In fact, there's one more case also. The details are important, but it's talking about a woman's menstrual cycle. And in terms of counting, in terms of a woman being in nida, being impure and being pure, so she has to count. So the different times she has to check if she saw any blood. So it's called a veses. It's like a cycle. So it says, and let's say every 30 days, so a woman knows she has to check on the 29th, whatever her own cycle is. It doesn't make a difference. So the Gemara says, you need 3 times to create a vesis. Not 2 times, but you need 3 times at 29 days, or whatever days we're talking about. Again, we seems to have an apparent conflict in the Gemara. When it comes to Mesu Achiv Machmas Mila, brothers dying during circumcision, or a woman, her husband's died, so 2 times is enough. She can't marry a third person, and he can't do the circumcision on the third son. Yeah, we see by a shor muad, it takes 3 times to get the status of a shor muad. And when it comes to a vesis setting up the cycle, it also takes. So what is the rule here? Is it 2 times or 3 times? So that's the question. What creates a chazaka? How many times? 2 times or 3 times? Everyone's going to have to agree to the facts that the shor muad it's 3 times. That's the pasuk in the Chumash. So what's the difference between the cases? So the Ran wants to suggest the following. We have a general principle when it comes to a doubt. So the different areas of halacha. In fact, there's a famous statement from the Vilna Gaon based on a pasuk that when it says later on in Devarim, when you come into the Beis Din and you have a question, it says ben din ledin, ben nega lenega, and it goes and bisharecha. So the pasuk lines out different levels. So the Vilna Gaon says it's referring to the different levels of halacha. So what is the Ran right? It's a case of doubt here. It's a suffix. I don't know whether 2 times creates a chazaka or 3 times. We don't know. It's inconclusive. So therefore you have to go with the specific case. So when it comes to a case where kosher or treif, I don't know, it's a doubt. So the halacha is suffix isser. If it's a doubt whether the food's kosher, you don't eat it. So therefore you go l'chumra. When it comes to the case of money, I'm not sure if I owe you money. So you go with the principle of money, which is hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. That possession is 9/10 of the law. If you have witnesses, if you have a document, it's yours, and if I'm holding it, you take it back. But there's no proof in any direction. So we assume the one who's holding on to it now is the owner. So therefore, if it's a doubt, we don't take out money out of a doubt, because we say the burden of proof is on the one who wants to take the money away. And since you don't know, so therefore you stick to the money. In the case of tuma, it makes a difference in a public place or private place. But the Ran saying is, it's a halakha we don't know. 2 or 3 times we're not sure. So every case has to be judged separately. So when it comes to the case of Mila and the woman whose husband's died, we're talking about cases of sakanas nafashos, of danger. So of course, if you're not sure 2 or 3 times, well, don't do the circumcision the 3rd, you might kill the child. Or don't marry the 3rd, you might kill him. But the other cases of sure, we are so therefore after 2 times. But the cases of sure, the pasuk says 3 times, and vesis is daraisa according to the Rambam. So therefore, subject daraisa u'chuber. That's how the Ran writes. Rav Selevan wants to say no. It's not a doubt. Really, there is no doubt here that when you only have to, the question is, what do I have to prove here? So Rav Selevan says as follows: that when it comes to setting, if all you're interested is setting up a pattern, so 2 times is enough. If I want to set up a pattern, this kid's a hemophiliac, twice is enough. This woman's causing the husband's death, twice is enough. But when it comes to the case of shor hamuad or vetis, it's not just setting up a pattern, it's more than that, because how do I know? Because the halacha is, you need a negicha ha-mechayeves. In other words, let's say if you have a shor that killed once, but then it killed in a way where it was exempt, and then it killed a 3rd time, so it would not be considered a shor muad, because it has to be 3 times that you did something which you're obligated. So we see, if it was just about setting up a pattern, who cares if I'm obligated? If it's all about the animal, I can just see what he does. So when it comes to this setting up a pattern, 3 times is enough. If it's setting up a pattern 2 times is enough. If you want to create a chal o shem, a status of a shor muad, a status of a vesis, then you need 3 times. So based on this, the poskim tie in the discussion of It's interesting, Maram Nuremberg. We all know, we started saying in our davening, we started asking for rain on December 4th, 5th, the same Tal Matal Uvracha. And we started saying Mashiv Haruach Mored Gashem on Shmini Atzeres. So what is the halacha if one forgets Mashiv Haruach Mored Gashem, or one forgets the same Tal Matar? So the halacha is, if you know you forgot them, even right now, if you know you forgot to insert them in its appropriate season, you have to repeat the Shemona Esrei again. What happens if you're not sure? If you're not sure, so again, we go by Chazaka. If it happens within the first 30 days, we assume it takes 30 days to establish a Chazaka. Here, 30 times 3 times a day, 90, 100 times. So we assume the first 30 days, if you're in doubt, you have to repeat. But the next 30 days, anytime after 30, so right now we're safe on both. If you're not sure, if you said Mashiv Haruach Mored Gashem, or if you're not sure if you said V'sein Talmud, you wouldn't have to go back, because we're after 30 days. But if you know for sure you missed, you have to go back. So what the Maram Nuremberg, one of the great rabbis, in his yeshiva, and in many yeshivas today, he suggests, do you know what you do? All you have to do is say, if you say Mashiv Haruach Mored Gashem 100 times, so that counts also. So again, you can't Mechal Chayim Bechesed Mechayim Eisim Rachim Rabim Somach. But you have to do the part before Mashiv Haruach and the part after Mashiv Haruach. If you say that 100 times, the Maram Nuremberg says that's good enough. You can do it 100 times in one sitting. That's the equivalent of doing 30 days. And others disagree and says, what are you talking about? That doesn't work. So what's the issue? What's the issue whether saying Mashiv Haruach or Mored Gashem 100 times works, creates a chazaka? Everyone agrees 30 days does. But there's a dispute whether 100 times at one sitting helps. What's the issue? So the issue is, it's the Gemara. The Gemara is talking about shor, the ox. So what does the Gemara say? As we said, if a gores on 3 consecutive days, he's considered a shor muad and he gets the stiff penalty. So what happens, the Gemara wants to know, if he gored 3 times in one day? 3 times on 3 consecutive days, he has the status of a shor muad. What about 3 times in one day?
You kill him.
So what? So does it, right? So therefore, so one opinion says, yeah, he gets the status of a shor muad. The other one says, what are you talking about? No. It just shows he's having a bad day. We all have bad days. It's just a bad day. You can't make any judgment calls based on one day. 3 times in one day does not create a chazaka. That's what the Gemara says. So the question is, and that's the way we paskin. We follow the opinion that you need 3 consecutive days of doing it, because if it's happening too soon, maybe he just had a bad day, he ate something, he's sick. So the question is then, so how does the Maram Nuremberg paskin by Mashiv Haruach Mored Gashem that 100 times in one day helps, and we see over here from the Gemara that goring 3 times in one day doesn't help. So what's the difference? What's the difference in the cases? So there are 2 types of chazaka. There's what we call, something's called a siman, and something's called a siba. Siman means it's a sign. Siba means it's the cause. In other words, when I say, we know when a shor kills 3 times, the halach is he gets the status of a shor hamuad. The question is, what's the pshat? Is it because he gored 3 times that created the status that was the seed, but that's the reason? Or no? Really, this animal at birth was a shor muad. We just didn't know it. By goring 3 times, he showed that retroactively he always was. But nothing changed. Is that he always? So that's the question. What does that mean? Does it mean? Is it because of the three things that changed his status? Or no, it didn't change his status. We just didn't know his status before. But once he gored 3 times, it was revealed to us that he always was. Like for instance, let's say someone's 12 o'clock. Someone walks in. He comes from another country. Someone's showing him his work, and all of a sudden, at 12 o'clock, everyone stops working and they run out to lunch. So the guy says to him, why does everyone stop working? The guy said, when those handles on the clock go 12 and 12, they know it's time for lunch. So is that a siba? I mean, because the clock went 12 and 12, I can't work? No. It's a sign that it's my lunch break and I'm taking it. It's not because the clock hit 12 and 12, I can't work anymore. It's a sign that it's a lunch break, but let's say, same thing, and let's say a fire goes off. The fire alarm goes off. So there's a direct connection. Because there's, assume it's a false alarm, but because there's a fire, there's a smoke, it's causing the alarm to go off. So that's a siba. So that's the discussion. The Maharam Rurenberg says that what type of chazaka is 3 times with the shor muad? It's a siman. Really, he always was a shor muad. We just didn't know it. So that's why, for that you need 3 consecutive times. But here, here it's a siba that no. So the Maharam compares the cases that they're both a siba, that 3 times by goring the 3rd time you became a shor muad. So too, everyone agrees when it comes to mashav haruach that it's because by me saying it 100 times, that's how I can remember it. So the Maharam compares the chazaka of mashav haruach to the chazaka of shor muad. So he assumes they're both the siba. But Rabbeinu Paris and others say no, mashav haruach is clearly a siba by me doing it like I used to saying it. But he's whole shor muad is only a siba, and you can't compare the two. But this to conclude, so we see all these different types of chazaka, 2 times, 3 times, 100 times. But the lesson, the Sefer Achinuch writes and others, is that's why did God give us so many mitzvahs? And so many mitzvahs regarding to Yetzias Mitzrayim and the Karban Pesach, because we're affected by our environment, but more important, we're affected by our actions. So the more we do, the more, so, we live in a society where, if I feel like it, I'll do it. Let me tell you a secret. You're never going to feel like doing it. Judaism says no. It's the action creates the mood. Don't wait for it to happen, but you going ahead, even if you have to go through the motions once in a while, if you do the action, then the feelings that come after you. You're not going to feel Shabbos if you don't observe. If you don't know what Shabbos is, it's not going to come. You have to feel and go through a Shabbos to feel it. Or all the things, all the things in life. That's why there's so many ma'asim actions, because in Judaism realizes we're affected by our actions and environment, and that's why God wanted to mezakas us and gave us all these 613 mitzvahs, because the more we do, the more we're affected. That's what we learn out from here. That's what the Maharam says, the chazaka. If you say it 100 times, or you say it over 30 days, when you get used to doing something, you get used to doing good deeds, it has an impact on you. That's why the Rambam writes, it's better to give the same amount of money. If you have a choice, you have the same amount of money you're giving. You have $100. I could give it $100 at one time, or I could give $1 at 100 different times. So the Rambam writes, it's better to give $1 at 100 different times, maybe to 100 different people. It's a separate issue. In other words, in terms of helping out the person, I could argue $1 is not going to help anyone, but $100 will help. So the Rambam is not talking about that. That's talking about, from the Ani's point of view, the poor person, you're right, maybe giving a big amount might help. But the Rambam is telling me it's about yourself. How do you become a giver? By getting used to giving. So if you're going to give a one-time shot, the effect it has on you isn't going to be the same. So if you give $100 separate times, 100 times is a lot of times, but you'll get used to giving and you'll become a giver. And that's the yesod of the whole Judaism and all the mitzvahs. That how do we become givers? God gave us all these mitzvahs, and we believe it's the action creates the mood, and the more we do, the better we become.